go live, that'd be great. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Olympic Region Clean Air Agency meeting for March 9th, 2022. It's sunny or about to be sunny in most of the region, so that's really exciting as we enjoy this fake spring with a really cold night coming at us. So let's go ahead and do introductions. I'll call through the board and then pass it to Jeff to introduce the staff. So let's see, I'm Jim Cooper, Chair from the Olympia City Council. Frank
Wolf, Pacific County Commissioner.
Joan? You're muted, Joan.
Unusual. I'm Joan Cathy from the council member from the city of Tumwater.
Jill?
Jill Warney, Grace Harbor County Commissioner.
Greg
Brotherton, Vice Chair and Jefferson County Commissioner.
Robin
Vasquez, use she, her pronouns, and I'm calling in from the city of Lacey.
Great. I think that's the board who is on right now. So I'll go to our CEO, Jeff. Can you introduce the staff, please?
Sure. Good morning. So my name is Jeff Johnston, Executive Director of ORCAA, and with us today we have the ORCAA management team, which includes Debbie Moody, the office manager, Odell Hadley, the senior air monitoring specialist, Mark Gooden, the engineering manager, Robert Moody, the compliance manager, and Dan Nelson, our communications manager. And we also have our Lynn Harding, our administrative services manager. And then we also have a couple staff listening in this morning. We've got Rob Weiland on compliance, and also Mike Schultz, compliance supervisor.
Great. Jeff, your team? The other Jeff?
Jeff Myers, counsel at Law Lyman, Daniel Kemmerer, and Bogdanovich. Mike?
And Mike Throgmorton, also of Law Lyman.
Great. And to round out the introductions, Carolina, you joined us.
Yes, sorry, I was running a little bit behind. Carolina Mejia, Thurston County Commissioner.
Perfect timing. Okay, great, everyone. So is everybody okay with the agenda as presented? Any changes? Seeing no dissent, we have an agenda. Thank you, everyone. So that takes us to the chair's report. Just two quick items. So a reminder that we are working on performance measures for our new executive director. And so Jeff and I have been going back and forth a little bit on that. And he's going to sit down with Greg Brotherton, our vice chair here, and I in about 2 weeks to go over that and in detail and get to agreement between the three of us. And if that timeline holds, then we will try to bring a draft of those performance measures to you at the April board meeting, and then hoping for adoption either in April or May, depending on the discussion and what folks would like to do with it. So we want to make sure the board has input, and I know Jeff is meeting with all of you or trying to. So if you haven't heard those requests for appointments, you might want to ping him directly and see if you can get on his calendar so you can have these discussions. So we really make sure that the performance measures are about the agency's success and not just about what Greg and Jeff and I think the organization should be doing for the next few years or the next year at least. So please let me know if you have thoughts about that as well, and we can make sure we incorporate that. But I think right now we're staying pretty high level, big picture, trying to keep it simple. A handful of objectives that relate to the needs of the organization and his, candidate profile that he was hired under. So, any questions about CEO performance? Okay. And then also to remind you, next month is April, and that's essentially our annual meeting. So we'll conduct elections for the chair and vice chair of the organization. And also, I think we have our first finance committee meeting in April as well to start looking at where we are in this year's financials and I think look at a first cut of the budget. And Greg, as a reminder, will be chairing that committee this year. And then I'll just put out, I am interested and willing to stay serving as the chair of ORCAA, but I absolutely love it when other people want to serve. And if you're interested and you want to put in the time, please let me know and we can talk. But I also think it'd be good to have just a little bit of consistency for Jeff's for maybe this year, but you know, totally open to conversation. So give me a shout and let me know what you're thinking. Any questions about that? We don't have a finance chair report, correct? We haven't met yet. So,
Mr. Chair, I have a question or comment about
welcome,
you
Randy.
about you staying on. I sure hope that you continue to be the chair, especially during the transition period. I appreciate anybody that wants to step up. That's always great. But if they do have that desire, perhaps they can wait for at least 1 year before they do that and let this transition happen as it should. And besides that, you're a pretty damn good chair, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Randy. You always make me blush. But it's yeah. So whatever the will of the board is, for sure, we can have that discussion, and transition and partnership is how we do things here. So I don't expect anything abrupt or weird. So happy to continue that dialogue with everyone. So okay. So public comment. I don't see any. Is there any public signed in, Dan, or on the call?
There is not.
Okay. Do we have the public phone line up?
Yes. It's available, but not being used.
Okay, I just typically that's a Zoom sign in, so that's why I wanted to make sure. Okay. But it's because you're doing 2 jobs now, that's why. Sorry. Okay, so I guess Jeff, anything from the public that we should know about since our last meeting?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, one thing maybe related to this is that one change we've made is we're now posting the Zoom link to these meetings on our website. So hopefully, previously folks needed to contact Debbie to get the link, and so which she could certainly provide. But this is hopefully a little easier and more accessible to the public who do want to get in and want to participate in these meetings.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, in a sense, there's the reason why I was late. For some reason on my calendar, I have some kind of a team meeting that was distributed to my calendar from ORCAA. And so I was waiting on that one before I went back and joined the Zoom one. I definitely would love to have this Zoom sent to us in our calendars when we're making our appointments.
I had the same problem. I had to manually put the Zoom link in off of an email.
Yeah, we're working on that. So I think we're going to try and get that calendar appointment cleaned up. I let Debbie and Dan know this morning. Carolina?
Can I make another nitpicky request?
Yeah, while we're in it.
Can instead of the invitation saying board meeting, can it say like ORCAA meeting or something where it signifies that it's from ORCAA? Because I have a million requests like board meetings on my calendar and I'm like, okay, which one is this one? So
same. We need a protocol countywide or region-wide about that. I bet everybody's dealing with it. Thanks for bringing it up, Carolina. Yeah, what board meeting? I'm on 6. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Debbie, for chiming in the chat that you heard this. We appreciate you and the team very much. Okay, so we'll move on to our consent agenda. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move to approve.
Move that we approve. I'll
Second.
second.
Okay, I have double motions and double seconds and I think I'm going to go with Frank and Robin just for the record. And then any questions, comments, or polls? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us to a presentation on the Mason County Saturation Study. I think we're going to go to Odell for this. Wondering if Odell is frozen.
Odell, are you there? I think she might be, like you said, Jim, she might be frozen. Let's try to figure this out.
Let's just give it a minute.
We were wondering if our bandwidth was going to support. You might notice that we're not all in the conference room this morning, hoping to be a little bit, not be behind masks and a little bit better interactions with all of you, but there's some questions about whether or not our bandwidth here in the building is going to support everybody being on a link and having video up. So
I saw you unmute Odell. Oh, she disappeared. So she's going to come back in. So we'll give it a sec.
I just walked down the hall. This is Lynn, and she is working on it.
Okay.
So I got
Thanks,
my
Lynn.
mask on.
We'll keep stalling for a second. And if we don't get her in a minute or so, we will switch the order of the agenda.
Okay.
Sounds like we need to revisit the bandwidth there. and see
Jeff
if
and I have been
it's-
talking about that. We need to up it significantly.
It's a conversation.
Can you
that
guys
we've
hear
been
and see
having.
me now?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we
Hello,
can.
Odell. Thank
Hi.
you.
Thanks. So yeah, I just had to log back into the meeting. When Dan said, "Can you shut your video off?" I was like, "I can, but it's probably never going to come back on again." So that is a fear that's happened in previous meetings when I attend from the office. So.
Well, I think we just told the director to get some bandwidth. So.
Yep, we're working
That would
on
be
that.
great.
Working on that, and also looking at our computer, at just our agency computer infrastructure, and there's some updates we need to make there as well. So
Odell, it's yours.
I am trying to share. Why isn't it giving me the opportunity to just share presentation? Ugh. All right, we'll just do that. All right, can you see that?
yes,
Yep.
we see it. Yeah, it's not in presentation mode, but we see the slide.
It won't. Yeah,
I think
I
it
know.
will.
I tried to go into presentation mode and it doesn't.
So up at the top, on your presenter slide where you just were, you can flip the view and it'll.
I don't know why this is such a problem from me. This is why I usually work from home on board meeting days. FYI. Okay, hold on.
That's pretty bad if you have better broadband at home than here.
It's not just the broadband, it's just the setup is more convenient and
We all build what we want at our home workstation, and government doesn't necessarily do that for us.
all right.
And
this
we only
should
have
work
1 or
now.
2 users at home, not 16.
Well, there's that too. So this should work now, and I apologize for the delay.
There we go.
Okay, so I'm going to do, this presentation is on the saturation study that we finished in 2020 in Mason County. So there's just been a lot going on this year, and I've been working on the data and putting the presentation together, and then we've just kind of been delaying giving you the presentation of the data because there was just, the meetings have been jam-packed full the last several months. So this is kind of old data, but I'm going to go back and also give a little bit of background for some of our newer board members that maybe aren't familiar with the saturation studies and why we are doing them. So first off, what is a saturation study? So for new people, the saturation studies are where we temporarily, and by temporarily for about a year, maybe a little over, we place air sensors or additional monitors at several locations around the county so that the county is, and I'm going to put this in quotes, saturated with air sensors. I don't exactly think 4 sensors is saturated, but it does hit the hot spots of most of our counties. And it gives us an idea of regional consistency in air quality. So study durations for a saturation study could be longer, could be shorter. It just depends on the goals. But for our goals, it's about 1 year so that we can capture a full season of data, the winter and the summer. And then we also have a sensor that's co-located with our current permanent monitor just to ensure and make sure that those are consistent in reading the same thing. So the purpose of the saturation study is to determine how representative the monitor, and in this case at Mason County, but in any saturation study, how representative that county's monitor is for the whole county, because each county only gets 1. And then we can use that data to verify or evaluate whether the current air monitor is appropriately placed or if there is a better location that might more accurately represent the county's air quality. And then lastly, we can compare some of the other locations where we place sensors that are maybe closer to another air sensor that's not ORCAAs or not in Mason County, or, you know, so in this case, maybe Bremerton is a better representation of Belfair. And then we can provide guidance to the communities that maybe they should, what are you doing, Jim? Maybe you can, we can provide guidance to other communities that there is another air sensor they should be looking at rather than the one in their county. So that is the general purpose. The experimental setup for this is to co-locate for Mason County. This is the first county where we use purple air sensors to do our saturation study. Prior to that, we were using sensors that cost about 5 times as much and were far more problematic with data logging. So we were really happy to switch over to the purple airs. We use those we co-locate a purple air sensor with our nephelometer. That's our permanent monitor in the county. And we use those, that comparison to develop a monthly correction factor for the sensor and make sure that it's consistent. And we ensure that all the data then are comparable in that region. And then in this study, we installed 3 additional purple air sensors around the county and collected at least 1 full year of data at each site. Oops. Then for data analysis and results, we assess air quality data from all the sites with respect to the current air monitor and other surrounding air monitors. Ensure that the current air monitor does not read lower than the test site sensors when daily air quality is moderate or worse at the test site. And when I say lower, I mean significantly lower, so that, you know, we really want to make sure there's not communities that are stuck in areas that would be unhealthy for sensitive groups or unhealthy when our air monitor is reading good. So here's a map of that I took this from the purple air sensor map. This is available online. It's their website, so the data is downloaded directly from their website. But these are the sensors that we had installed in Mason County. So this is the one that is co-located with our nephelometer here, Mason County Official Air Monitoring Station at ORCAA. We had that one. We had another one up at Bordeaux Elementary, Timber Lakes, and Belfair. This is an Olympia purple air sensor that we can also compare. And then this is the location of Puget Sound Clean Air's permanent air monitor as well, and a few other purple airs up in Bremerton. So one of the reasons that this was important was to see how well the Belfair compared with Bremerton to see which site was more representative. And then this saturation study sensors are in the blue box. So this is the corrected purple air sensor compared to the nephelometer. And we use that monthly data where we compared with the nephelometer. But the main thing here is the R-squared factor or correlation factor of 0.95 essentially means that 95% of the variability can be represented by the nephelometer or the representative data, which is good. I mean, the closer you are to R-squared equal to 1 means that the data are exactly the same. So this just shows and is justifying our use of the purple air sensors, and that they are more or less and more measuring the same thing as our nephelometer. There is a seasonal dependence on that correction factor, and we think a lot of that has to do with the relative humidity that makes particles larger or smaller, but it could also just be that there are different aerosols or different particles in the atmosphere in the winter compared to the summer. And there's also a change because of the range. If you look at the full range of PM 2.5, the comparison between the purple airs and the nephelometers isn't exactly linear. So in the lowest ranges, they're actually more 1-to-1, and then as you get up higher, you can see that. So in the winter, when we have a lot more particulate, the purple airs are over predicting PM 2.5 by a factor of 2 to 3. And in the summer, they're actually much closer to the 1-to-1. So that's why we need to do that correction factor each month to make sure that we're measuring the same thing. And I point this out to you guys because a lot of people are installing their own purple air sensors and in your districts as well. And oftentimes their purple air is going to read 2 times to 3 times higher than what is the actual measurement. And that can make them upset. They will feel like there's a problem with our monitor, that they're reading unhealthy at their house, but that our monitor says the air is good or moderate. And so that is just something for you guys to keep in your back pocket, that if you're not correcting those purple air sensors, they are not going to be giving you the right data. And this is a well-known and well-characterized phenomenon.
Odell?
EPA has studied, yeah?
Is there a place they can go to correct their own individually?
So, yeah, I mean, Dan and I have kicked around the idea of putting up the correction factor for each county. It's just, I have to figure out a way to streamline that so it's not so onerous on myself to download that data, do the comparison, run the correction factor, and then post it. So I'm working on that. I haven't had a huge amount of time to do that, but I'd like to get that done so that they could go to us. But the other thing is, within Purple Air itself, there is a box that you can click on and drop down menu that will allow you to pick a correction factor. And if they pick LRAPA's correction factor or EPA's correction factor or the wood smoke, they're not going to be exact to their region, but they're going to be really close. So they're going to, it's pretty consistent, at least for the purposes of making decisions, like, you know, the green color, the yellow color, whatever. So they might be off by 10% or 15%, but that shouldn't matter. So yeah, you can guide them to that and then they can correct it there right on the map. So air quality in Mason County, these are our 4 monitors that I showed you. We have one at Shelton. That's the co-located one with our current nephelometer. Then Timberlake in the light blue, Belfair and Bordeaux Elementary. This is in the winter. So what you see here, this is the fraction of days at the AQ level. So 40 to 50% of the days in the winter at all the sites are lower than 5 micrograms per meter cubed. So somewhere between 0 and 5. And then the other 40 to 50% are between 5 and 10. So still in the good. So basically 90% of the days were still good, but shifted a little bit toward the moderate. And then you do see a few days, and that would be 5 to 10% of the days in the winter at all of our sites are in the moderate range. And that was for 2019 to 2020 year that we did this study. And then in the summer, you see that actually 90% of the days are in this 0 to 5 microgram per meter cubed. And so we really just have this tiny fraction here in Belfair that we saw any moderate days in the summer. And I have to go back and look at this. I haven't, my guess is that might be one day, 4th of July. A lot of our counties and cities have banned fireworks, but some of the more rural communities, you'll still see a lot of personal fireworks going off, and that can really drive the air quality down on that day. So it's possible that that might be why. This is for 2019 summer, and we really didn't have any wildfire impacts in 2019. So, oh, one other thing back here, so this 2020, the wood smoke is a very different aerosol in it, and you'll see that that purple air is actually underpredict wood smoke. And so you'll see here it's instead of a factor of 2 higher, it was at 0.9. So that is one thing to be aware of. So site-to-site correlations, again, 1 is perfect, but this is a way of just looking at how the different sites correlate with the reference monitor and each other. And a way to determine if there is maybe a better site. And then I've added in Bremerton to see how well Bremerton compares. And actually none of our sites, including Belfair, compared better with the Bremerton site. And I was actually kind of surprised. I had expected Belfair to compare more favorably with Bremerton. But so this just helps to say, okay, all the regions in Mason County should probably just look to Shelton for their monitor. Daily PM 2.5 site-to-site comparison at all of our sites. So this is the co-located site. It looks pretty good. We would expect it to look like that. Timberlake, you see more spread, of course, because there are different sources the further away you get. But the one thing I just want to point out here is where it's green, that means the sites are predicting the same AQI. And so one thing that we don't want to see here, so example in Belfair, we don't want to see that the Belfair site is moderate. And I have this as NMRF I meant to fix that, but that's North Mason Regional Fire, and that was the code for that site, but it's the same as Belfair. So here we're saying that the nephelometer, which was the Shelton site, is good, but the Belfair site is moderate. And we did see a few of those days, but they're so close to the line that you really have to look at this plot to see, is it egregious or is it acceptable? And then you actually see a lot more sites where the nephelometer was reading moderate and Belfair was reading good. And that is what you want to see. You want to see the reference monitor having worse air quality. So again, in Timberlake Lakes, we actually did see more moderate days than we did in Shelton, but they're so close to the line that it probably isn't worth. I mean, Timber Lakes is a small community, a lot more wood stoves, and it's not going to be a good place to put a permanent monitor because there's just not the population there. It's just a very tiny percent of the population, and and I'll get into that later. But we don't want to lose the history of our data at
Odell.
Yes.
So are these scatter plots still comparing the purple air monitor to the nephelometers? Is that what
these are comparing the purple airs to the purple airs. So these are in each community. So here is Shelton. Well, this one, the co-located one, is comparing the nephelometer to the purple air to show that it's comparable. Oh, but yes, here they're comparing it to the reference monitor in Shelton. So
okay, so this is still like how close are the purple air readings versus the nephelometer readings?
This is more
and Shelton's are closest.
This is more evaluating how well does this nephelometer in Shelton characterize the air quality in Belfair or Timberlake or at Bordeaux Elementary. So does the nephelometer that we have permanently located in Shelton, is that a good representation of the sites that are far away? And this basically shows that yes, it is. Within
Thank you.
The air
yeah,
quality.
that helps.
Okay. Sorry.
So all of these results are being compared to the Shelton reader. That's helpful.
Because that's our reference monitor. That's the permanent one.
Odell, I would like to point out that I lived in Belfair for most of my life, and it's a funnel there. No matter what happens, when the wind's going that direction, it just shoves everything up through the Hood Canal on the bottom half, right up through Belfair, and that's how it gets out of the valley. So just know that, and the North Mason Regional Fire Authority is down there in the valley where it starts to get pushed up before the elevation goes up.
So you're not surprised that it doesn't look like Bremerton?
Not at all. And as a matter of fact,
perfect.
whenever there's a fire or something, that's why Belfair will get it worse, because it all just funnels there when that wind is going down the direction of the canal.
Right. Well, that's good. Yeah. So I mean, it's good to know Shelton sort of does represent that whole Hood Canal region. So that's thank you, Randy. All right. So I think this is just, again, the Belfair versus Bremerton monitor. So this was my analysis to really look at that. And the blue dots are the Belfair compared to Bremerton, and the red dots are compared to Shelton, and that shift is higher, which means that the air quality in Bremerton compared to Belfair was actually better considerably. So we're going to continue to call Shelton the reference monitor. This is just, I've thrown this in before, but this is just to show that the meteorology also affects PM 2.5. So low wind speeds and cold temperatures tend to be more associated with the high PM 2.5. And then when we have these warmer temperatures up here and higher wind speeds, we get much lower PM 2.5. So it's not a perfect predictor, and sometimes these plots show the effect more strongly, but I just wanted to remind folks of that can also dramatically impact air quality throughout the region. And then I also looked at wind direction and PM 2.5 in Mason County. So this is a way of us trying to get an idea of where the PM might be coming from. We don't really see a strong dependence, but basically, as Randy stated, we do tend to see more or higher PM 2.5 concentrations when the winds are northeasterly, or as he said, coming down that Hood's Canal from Bremerton. So this is probably illustrating exactly what Randy was just talking about, that when the winds are coming from that direction of Bremerton, we do see a higher PM 2.5 in Shelton. And again, also in the summer. So these are normalized by wind direction, and just when you see more color, it just means a higher frequency of high PM 2.5 concentrations associated with that wind speed. And then the last analysis we did was day of week analysis for the Shelton site. And that was just to kind of get an idea of the sources of the PM 2.5, if we could tell from the diurnal daily variability of how that looks. And this is no surprise here. We see in the winter, and we often see this, a peak in the morning and a secondary peak in the afternoon. And that lines up and then with when people are using their wood stoves. So they'll get up in the morning, light the wood stove, bat it down for the day, and then come home around 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and they start to go up again, and then they kind of stay elevated through the evening. Compared to the summer, we just don't see any change throughout the day at all at any of the sites. So it just stays very consistent. Now in bigger cities or near freeways, you'll often see a similar graph as this one, but it's more associated with commute hour traffic. But we don't see that at all in the summer, so we know that that's not what's happening at this site. And so the final decision is that we will keep the air quality monitor at its current location at the Shelton County Fire Station. It represents other sites in Mason County well, and although some sites like Timber Lakes did show statistically higher daily PM 2.5 concentrations, they were generally within the same air quality category, or AQI, air quality index. And even if they were in the moderate, it was just barely in the moderate, so not enough to warrant losing a 15-year historical record. Because when you move a site like we did in Port Angeles, and you're trying to look at the last 20 or 25 years, you always have to remind yourself, well, we did move it here in 2015, and so maybe there is a shift that's not represented by the trend in air quality, but just by the change in location. So it has to be pretty significant for us to want to move the site. So just a reminder of that. So that is all I have on that presentation. And if you have questions.
Questions for Odell? Well, for the new folks, this has been are we at an 8-year mission now to get all around our region? And how many, do you have 1 or 2 counties left?
Well, I'm currently in the process of collecting data in Grays Harbor and then Pacific County. But as I said, we are moving over to the purple airs. And so instead of doing rotating every few years to a new county, I think we'll start crowdsourcing and using public purple air sensors, because that data can just be downloaded. And therefore the data is just there. And then when we have a question or we need to evaluate something, we can just go in. And if there are holes in the areas, we have our own purple sensors that can be deployed. So it's sort of changing the whole format of the saturation studies, and sort of just being able to have the data constantly at all of our counties.
So we have a live correlation to our permanent monitor, so you don't necessarily need to do a formal study anymore. Just for me to simplify that.
We are co-locating purple air sensors with all of our permanent sensors, and so the only one I have left to install, I have Port Townsend left to do, and I think Raymond. But other than that, we have purple air sensors up at Shelton, Port Angeles, Lacey, and Aberdeen. So I only have 2 left to install to co-locate.
Nice. That's really exciting. That's a great change in technology to, give you time to focus on other things, I think, too.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be really good.
Nice. Anything else for Odell on the saturation study? Well, I think that Randy has a story to tell his commission now, so that'll be a fun presentation.
Let me know if I can help, Randy.
Okay, so we're going to go now to new business, which is our 2022 board work plan. And this is just something that Jeff and I have been talking about as we look at we have a new director. We want to make sure we're all on the same page. We haven't done a board work plan before. And so him and the staff have looked at kind of the trends of what we do annually and he has some discussion for us around what our next year looks like. So I think I'm turning it right over to you, Jeff. You're muted, sir.
There we go. Okay. Well, thanks, Jim. Yeah, I mean, I just, as Jim mentioned, he and I have been talking about this, and as I am in my role looking out at the meetings over the coming months and over the next year, helpful to look at it sort of month by month in terms of what's coming up, what do I and the team here at ORCAA need to be preparing for. Of course, we're on a regular budget schedule, and so those things are on our calendar, whether for finance committee meetings, other things. But if there are other topics that you all want to hear about, Jim mentioned earlier performance measures, the conversations that he and that Greg and I are having, and as you probably remember, in my contract, it spells out that there'll be 90-day, 180-day, and then 11-month check-ins with me and my performance. So those things are on the agenda on our calendar for upcoming meetings. But I didn't know, so in conversations with Jim, we just wanted to kind of tee up this conversation, see if there are other things that you want to get on the agenda. Again, as I've mentioned, and as I've, some of the one-on-one conversations that I've had with some of you, really interested in figuring out how these board meetings can be as useful as possible for all of you in providing the kind of information that you need in your job as ORCAA board member in terms of representing the work that ORCAA is doing to your jurisdiction and just making sure that we're tied in with the communities that you represent. And so just wanted to just tee up and initiate a conversation today, but I don't think we necessarily need to. Well, we certainly won't be finalizing. It's like, okay, well, if we didn't mention it at the March board meeting, then we can't add something to the upcoming board meeting. So, but I mean, then there's things like, well, are we going to stay virtual forever, or at some point do we want to think about? I mean, I'm assuming at some point perhaps we could move more toward a hybrid model where some of us are gathering in person and some of us still remote. I mean, right now, ORCAA technology doesn't support that, but perhaps we could be there at some point, or maybe there's some meetings where, hey, let's all get together in person for maybe once or twice a year. So again, I just wanted to initiate the conversation today. So, I mean, and I did work with Debbie to put together a sort of a general calendar. I don't know, do you want, Jim, would it be helpful to show that, or maybe after the meeting can send it out to get some conversation about it and ask if anybody has any feedback on it?
I think rather than focusing on the calendar, it's good, like you said, let's have a little bit of discussion about what people are looking for in the next year, and then we can bring that in the form of a plan and calendar next month.
Okay, that sounds good.
Well, I'll start if that's all right. I think the where we do the meetings, how we do the meetings is a critical question. And I think we've got policy to update too, because it really did require in-person attendance for 10 of the meetings or something. And I think we addressed that. I forget if we tied it to the governor's emergency proclamation right now, but as we know, it's a long drive from some of the different areas down to the ORCAA offices. We're just experimenting with OWL right now at Jefferson County, and it seems like a pretty turnkey solution that really opens up the hybrid meetings. And I think hybrid meetings, while are just fantastic, since they've increased our accessibility to the public, as Jeff talked about a little bit. So I'm all in favor of hybrid meetings. I'm also in favor of, I guess, requiring that we gather in person sometimes. I think there's something that we've lost in not doing that too. So I think while we should have hybrid meetings at every meeting, that we should definitely all gather more than we have been now, probably less than we were before the pandemic.
Yeah, good thoughts. Yeah, I've heard great things about OWL. I've been on the receiving end, but not in the room with the machine yet. So, other thoughts around this coming year? Jill?
Oh, I agree with Greg. I was just wondering if you had an idea how much that OWL system costed in total.
It's $1,000. Get it on Amazon, the same price as you can get it anywhere else. We're still experimenting with the best way to hook it up, but if one person had it on their Zoom meeting, if we had it in the boardroom, you just hook it up to one computer centrally, and it'll take care of with one Zoom connection, putting whoever's talking on, as well as a panoramic view, and it's a very effective big speakerphone as well. So it works pretty well. We've had a lot of dealing with our AV capture, and our more complicated AV system is a bit of a rigmarole, but it's pretty
You
adaptable.
don't have to have other equipment to go with it other than just your laptop that you already have?
Nope, just the one unit, and you're ready to go, and it'll integrate pretty seamlessly.
Okay.
Well,
Just like an
Does work.
external camera and speakerphone in one device. And I think you can connect two in the same room, so they would work in series.
Do you
Robin?
have to have a big
Oh.
display?
Go
no
ahead, Jill.
display.
Jeff, no?
It looks like an owl. It's got a 360 camera, big speakerphone, connection, USB connection to your computer or AV system.
Yeah, we've been discussing what to do also and trying to figure out.
I'll
'Cause
just
I
say in
think
Olympia, there's a complexity with our jurisdictions around it because our rooms are television studios, and you have to make sure it works with the local cable streaming and that kind of thing. So,
And
Robin?
one other issue on that too is OPMA and hybrid meetings, and we just want to make sure we don't run afoul of that. And even though legislation hasn't really changed, our understanding is that we can have a hybrid meeting with the public virtual and us in person if we need to do that based on room capacity. So that's our understanding right now.
Well, so maybe that's a good place to start this conversation is with a briefing from Jeff Myers and then an idea from Jeff Johnston around technology when we think it could fit in one agenda item. Robin? Oh, sorry, Jeff, about this topic, and then I'll go to Robin.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that I think Greg's understanding of the OPMA is correct. I think you can have a hybrid meeting where everybody is present in the room and the public is attending virtually. However, it's subject to meeting capacity requirements. I think that if you do have the capacity in person and the public wants to attend in person, they have that right to do so. As long as the room has the capacity to do that. And if you are listening to the public and you have capacity issues, there may be a way to balance that with an overflow room as well.
Great. Jill, or sorry, Robin.
So I wanted to agree with Greg. I think that there's benefit in at least occasionally gathering in person, as long as we all have sort of adequate forenotice so we can make sure that we're in the right spot at the right time. But yeah, I would like to at least some of the time have in-person meetings again. That would be nice. The other question I had as a newer board member, and Jeff, you provided me with a number of different materials, or Deb Moody did, but as I'm reviewing the materials, do we have like a strategic plan that is regularly reviewed or updated for the organization? And if we don't, putting something like that together might help us identify our priorities for our meetings and throughout the year.
Go ahead.
So there is a plan. I think it was last updated in 2018, and there was so there is, yeah, and I can certainly share, Robin, with you what the board did last time this was looked at, and I don't know, Jim or others can certainly weigh in, but the plan is, I mean, one of the performance measures that you'll be seeing more about soon is the fact that is doing a major update of the agency strategic plan, because it has been a while since it's been looked at, and frankly, the last time it was looked at, it was, in my mind, more of a work plan than a strategic plan. And so I think it's definitely time, especially with a lot of sort of new things coming at us, and so it's definitely time for an update.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. It was very
Thanks.
operational and not visionary, where we were in that time. And so maybe Jeff and team, if you could send that plan with, we were doing quarterly updates on it. And so one of the last quarterly updates would be a good reference point for the new board members to just see that and then know that that's front and center at the top of Jeff's performance plan. You're on the right track, Robin. Other thoughts? So I just had one, I think there's this high level desire from some board members to have a better understanding of how the Clean Air Agency's role fits in the state and some of our county's climate goals. And that is both around, the carbon emissions as they are measured, and I think there's a component of environmental justice, to a lot of folks' point, so we don't pass on growing costs of regulatory approaches or infrastructure changes directly, particularly to low-income residents around our county. And so I could talk more about what I'm hopeful for there, but like some bigger picture presentation that connects ORCAA's role to, to community and this bigger picture we're talking about around climate and, and honestly, the success of the businesses and the ventures that also are core components to the infrastructure of our community. It's a fine, ORCAA's on a teeter-totter as I see it in this regulatory role. And I don't have a clear understanding of our connection to those bigger conversations. So to me, it would be nice to have that built in, but maybe that's also part of the strategic plan.
So that's actually something that Mark Good and I were talking about in some ways just this morning. One of the things that we want to get on the agenda perhaps for the April meeting is an update on the emissions inventory work that ORCAA does. So we annually collect emissions inventory. Well, we regularly collect emissions inventory and then once a year roll it up and submit it to the EPA. And so we were talking about that, and I specifically mentioned, well, what about the greenhouse gas component of that? And because that's not, and so there's a role that ORCAA plays and some information we collect, but that's primarily as something that the Department of Ecology does. And so, so yeah, I guess I'm just saying that that's your comment, Jim, is right along the lines of something that Mark and I were talking about this morning. So we can certainly get that on the agenda, and I can have conversations with you and maybe others to kind of fine tune that and make sure that what we're putting together is going to answer your and the rest of the board's questions on this particular topic.
Great. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to see around the work plan, or, I think we all agree on Greg's idea that we would have hybrid for forever, and maybe there's 1 or 2 or 3 meetings a year that we say we want to get together in person. To me, it would be really cool if one of those was like an outside, playtime with some good barbecue, or I guess they eat biochar in Greg's county. So, but something like that that's a little more fun, because the better we know each other and play together, the better we'll work together too. Okay. Any other thoughts? And folks are having individual discussions with Jeff, so please don't hesitate to mention anything, even if it's just a little thing in the back of your mind. We want to make sure we're approaching this work in a way that's inclusive of every county, and we know that the politics are extremely different in every county, and it's really important that we approach that as balanced as we can within our means. So. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and move then to Jeff. Do you have what you need? So let me ask that before we move on. Is there any other specific questions you wanted to put out there?
No, I think this is good. Again, it's good to hear kind of a general sense. And as Jim, as you mentioned, I'll certainly be having follow-up conversations, and certainly encourage people, if something occurs to you afterwards, don't hesitate to reach out, send me an email, give me a call, we can chat about it. But I will put together, as I mentioned, been working with Debbie to put together a schedule. So we'll share that perhaps as part of the notes for this meeting, or I don't know, we'll share that and then figure out how to best get input on that. And maybe that can be a topic. We can maybe explicitly look at that at the April meeting, perhaps, since that's our annual meeting, maybe that would be a good time to be looking at that and kind of finalizing to the extent to which a draft work plan gets finalized, but we can look at that then.
Yeah, I think that's smart. And honestly, as Jeff and I have talked about this, doing the work plan kicks off our budget process and informs, you know, what we'd like to see in that bigger policy decision of our budget too. So, okay, let's move to our director's reports, and we're going to start with Robert on compliance.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In your packet, the tab B4 is the compliance program update. And we're going to go a little bit backwards this morning. So if you go to the end of it, page 14 and 15, you will find, especially for the new members, aren't really familiar with this whole report thing that you're looking at in front of you. It kind of goes through and gives you some details. Debbie attached this last for this meeting so that it's available to you. Kind of describes what all the different little categories are as you go through this stuff. You know, it is there as a resource. Certainly, if you have questions, you know, sometimes it's easier just to ask. So feel free to do that as well. Backing up a little bit to page 8, that is the start of the complaint report, part of the report that's there, just a variety of things that we receive on a monthly basis. What I wanted to show you though is at the top of there, the third one down came in on February 14th. And if you go to the far right column, it says, you know, what was the problem? Well, it was black and gray powder on our property. And this in itself is a little bit unusual, but it was the first of many calls, actually, of half a dozen, I think we got total, from all over, at least 2.5 counties worth. So so it's very spread out, and people were comparing it to, they're asking if St. Helens blue again. So now if you click down to page 11, that photograph there, it is kind of reminiscent for those that were around when St. Helens blew. It's kind of a lunar view of somebody's car hood. And this is what they were calling about. Well, we have collected some samples here and there, and we have sent those off to a lab to have it looked at. What we did notice, though, is the 3 sites we got samples from, they all had Western red cedar trees. So first cut is we had nice warm weather suddenly, and the trees released an awful lot of pollen very, very quickly. So yes, Jim, some people know that better than others. So it dumped, and we think that's what it is, but it was a very unique, sudden event that a lot of people were really curious about. So that was that one. Lastly for you, I have an update to a story we shared with the board, I think last fall. A year ago, ORCAA had cited a gentleman for outdoor burning in city limits. He did not have the means to pay a penalty, but he wanted to mitigate the situation as best he could with what he could do. And what he helped arrange, and Dan was also involved here, but he was able to get a downtown bookstore in Olympia here to post some information on outdoor burning in the city limits and what you can and can't do kind of thing. And he also, out of his way, he came to the office and got a bunch of brochures and proceeded to hand those out in the community where he was staying, to try to educate, you know, what he had learned, he wanted to share with his peers. And all of this, we closed out our case in July last summer, and we thought we were done. Well, I had the pleasure of getting a call from him this week, and he's had a rough 6 months or so, but he's very convinced that this is the right thing to do. So he is actually going to come back to the office and get some more brochures here and continue to pass those out to the people that he think need to hear that message. So it's kind of heartwarming, actually. So aside from that, on the paperwork, I guess it's not paper, the electrons in front of you, do you have any questions about the reports there? Anything of interest? Not really seeing anything. If you do come across something later that you have some questions on, certainly give us a call and we'll find some answers for you.
Good report. Yeah, I was like, why is the Craters of the Moon National Park in our report? So,
yep.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go now to the engineering program update from Mark.
While we wait for Mark, I just have to say I love a mystery, so that's great. Good narrative today, Robert. But my narrative desire would have had you give us the answer next meeting. Honestly, you got to build a little bit of anticipation next time with these mysteries.
I will try to do that. Mark just said his computer went down. Want to do it here?
Yeah, I want to see the picture of the plume, Robert.
Yeah, I was gonna show. You can.
And perhaps either a quarter or a rock hammer in the picture for scale purposes.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
That's good.
Mark is having difficulties. You want to just go to the next category while he tries to make this thing work again?
I can do that. We'll go to Odell for the monitoring report. Surprise.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Sweet. All right. Let me just get this up.
I hear the Comcast truck on the way now.
All right. All right, sharing screen now. All right.
Looks like it's
so,
Comcast taking our whole county. Go ahead.
All right, so this is our monitoring summary for February. No surprises here. Well, maybe a few. February's can be wintry or it can be like spring, and it was more like spring this year. So yeah, almost all of our days were good. We had one moderate day in Port Angeles, but if you look at that maximum 13.6, it was just over the line from good into moderate, so not too egregious there. And we had 100% data collection at all sites, which is always worth celebrating. So yeah, no big news stories here. Oh, I just realized something. There's a mistake here. Shelton, we had a maximum of 14.1, which means Shelton also had a moderate day, and I did not calculate that in. So yeah, Port Angeles wasn't the only one. The Grays Harbor saturation study, here's an update from that. These are all publicly owned sensors with the exception of the one in Aberdeen. That is ours. The Aberdeen Port Angeles, that's the co-located one at Harbor High School. I am still trying to figure out the logistics of getting a purple air sensor installed at the Central Park Elementary School. We found a location, we met out there. They needed to install power, but that hasn't happened. So I have purchased a solar setup. The first one I got wasn't appropriate, and we just exchanged that, and I am now testing the second solar setup. So if that works, then we will have a way to just install those purple airs anywhere that we have Wi-Fi, and we won't be limited by access to an outlet. So that's pretty exciting. If we can get that installed. So still working at it. The data will eventually come in. We will eventually get this squared away. And then we'll also be exploring a second site in Cosmopolis. And then that will be the full number of sites. So as you can see, the purple airs definitely give us a lot. It puts the saturation back in saturation study. So instead of just the 3 additional sites, we're getting at least twice that many, if not more. Our purple air versus the nephelometer in Grays Harbor is a little different. And this is, I just wanted to show this to you because if you'll remember for Mason County, we were saying it was over predicting by a factor of 2 to 3. And so far statistically here, it's actually over predicting in Aberdeen by a factor of 3 or higher. And that might be because, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess before you ask, is because we're closer to the coast, so we have a lot more salt in our aerosol, and that's going to change the way that it scatters at the wavelength. And I'm not going to get into the details, but I think it just is it's a different aerosol type, so that it interacts with those instruments a little differently. And then in other monitoring news, I finished the board presentation, which I gave to you, and so we'll be continuing to translate that to our final report to be published on ORCAA's website, and I'll work with Dan to maybe put the board presentation on there until I get that report completed, if people want to look at that. Again, I just mentioned working on solar solution for installing additional purple airs with the Grays Harbor saturation study. I also wanted to tell you, and I couldn't remember if I mentioned this last time around, but after we lost Nick, I lost my backup air monitoring person. So Robert Weiland has agreed to be the new monitoring person. We decided to pull that away from the IT. It made sense, but I think it was limiting the number of people or the people that were applying for our IT position. And then because Rob has a pretty good technical background, he's a smart guy, and he's already traveling around to do his inspections, it made sense for him to just be able to go to those sites while he's doing his inspections and run those QCs and check on the sites. So we've been training on that. And we will, as we progress, we'll decide how much of the monitoring duties he wants to take on. But for right now, he's just going to be doing the traveling and the quarterly QCs, which is a huge help to me. And then I am continuing to work with our purple air sensor data evaluation. There's lots of things to look at. One of those is that long-term trend and how that changes. And I showed you part of that in the presentation for Mason County, where I showed you the 2019 and the 2020 correction factors seasonally. So you saw that the change in seasons, but maybe not that there is also a trend as the longer that it stays in place. So that's also something to look at. So that is all I have. Oh, one other thing I almost forgot. This happened in March, so it didn't show up on the slides, but we just found out last week that we are, I think, 99.9% positive that we are getting the funding from EPA to upgrade the infrastructure at Chesapeake, which will include a new trailer, a new Met Tower, a new improved site. We're working with University of Washington. They've the Pacific Northwest Seismic Group and another seismic, Univaco, have sensors up there. So they're super excited, and we'll be working and coordinating with them, as well as the NSF project with UW to put up additional air monitoring equipment. So they will, all of that will be done in collaboration, and we'll be using the same trailer, and we'll be getting ready some of the derelict trailers so that the site doesn't look like an old dumping ground for old trailers. So we're really excited to get that site up to standard code and looking a little more modern, and yeah, so that's exciting. And that is all I have for monitoring news.
That is exciting. What's the value of that project for us? Odell, do you know?
I think they're giving us about 130,000, but we had, so I'm having a meeting with EPA next week and MACA because we officially applied for that. Well, officially, this was the direct funding as part of the American Rescue Plan. So we applied for that through the MACA. So technically the MACA tribe applied for that funding, but my name was also on it. So it's like it's a partnership. Nice. So we have a meeting next week set up because we still have to decide if we still have to put an official grant application through grants.gov, even though it's already been approved, they need it. And so we need to figure out if MACA is going to do that. So it would technically be the MACA that have the money, and they would, we would, I don't know. There's a lot of logistics that need, cool. Or maybe we will run the grant and just do it that way. EPA has also approached the Department of Ecology to see if they would disseminate the funds, but they don't already have a grant set up with the Makah tribe. So there's just some stuff that needs to get worked out as far as how that money is going to actually get from them to us.
Great. I like the partnership. That's cool.
Yeah.
Other questions for Odell? Okay. Looks like we have Mark. And I'm just going to suggest that people in the office, maybe only one camera is on at a time so we don't lose anyone in the middle. Go ahead, Mark.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. My computer is actually scheduled to be replaced here soon, which is good because I think the problem was my computer specifically. As soon as I hit the camera, it shut off. So I'll try to be quick here, and I would like to share my screen eventually, Jim, or Dan. Okay, so I'll direct you to tab B5. And again, for new board members, I'm Mark Gooden. I'm the manager of the engineering department here at ORCAA, and we're in charge specifically of processing permit applications for commercial and industrial sources. So in tab B5, you're going to see a long list of permits that are in-house right now. And the cases that you're going to see on this list include two broad categories. First broad category are construction permits. These are for either new commercial or industrial facilities that emit air pollution, or some of them are for existing facilities that want to add equipment that emits air pollution. So that's the first category. And the second, and those permits we call notices of construction. And the second broad category of permits you'll see on this list are air operating permits. And those are 5-year renewable permits that we are required to issue for the very, very large facilities in our jurisdiction. By large, I mean large in the way of emissions. And in general, these are facilities that emit more than 100 tons per year of any single pollutant. So that's what defines very large facilities. We call them major sources. Okay, so two broad categories of permits: construction permits and air operating permits. So you'll see right on the first page there above that solid blue line, those are the permit applications that we have actually processed and became final since the last board meeting. And I'll just offer that if you have any questions regarding any of these, to either ask now or to send an email to Jeff or myself, and we'd be happy to give you all kinds of details. I'd like to circle back on just one of these on this list, and then bring up another topic. So the one I'd like to circle back on is on page 3, the last page. And the reason why I want to circle back on this one is because this was a facility that Jim Cooper brought to our attention. This is the Washington State Healthcare Authority. They have a generator that was installed. An emergency generator was installed without getting the proper permits through ORCAA, and it's happened to smoke a lot. So that was brought to our attention. After the fact, we worked with the facility to get an application. We saw enough red flags. We circled back, visited the facility, and determined that we cannot approve this generator for a number of reasons, which I could get into, but just in a nutshell, the generator is smokes too much. It's installed in a very poor location. And so we essentially sent back to the healthcare authority a letter stating we recommend that you don't even start this engine for testing purposes unless it's loaded. Loaded meaning if it's got to have a load. It's got to have somewhere for the electrons to go. Otherwise, that engine is going to be smoking like an idling diesel engine that's not properly controlled. That's the case here. So it's got to be loaded when tested, but that's just one of the problems. The other problem is it's installed on the second floor of a parking garage. From what I witnessed, the smoke gets induced back into the parking garage. It's just bad news. Anyways, we decided to wrap this one up by having them contact us, meet with us, so we could determine a solution. I think ultimately the solution may be battery backup for their emergency purposes. It's a huge generator for what they need it for, which is lighting for getting people out of the building in case of an emergency is my limited understanding right now. But hopefully they will meet with us. We sort of put the ball in their court and said, hey, we suggest a meeting. We're available. Let's meet. Let's figure out a solution here. Until then, don't operate that generator unless it's loaded. And anyways, I have yet to hear back from them. So I see a question here from Robin, and Robin, there is no deadline. She asked, what is the deadline on that? Is it this week? There was no deadline. We just had a request that they initiate the meeting, and then
When
we'll
would you
talk
like
about,
to hear from them?
excuse me?
When would you like to hear from them?
Oh, well, I put my email, I'm available next week and the following. So this now is the following week. So I haven't heard back from them. So
Okay.
we generally take an escalating approach here. We try to take a very, very cooperative approach. And if we don't get traction, then we'll elevate it. So I might send another email, hey, let's meet by such and such a date. Anyway,
I have a feeling you'll hear from them in the next day or so.
Does DES own that building, or does the healthcare authority own that building?
It's privately
I
owned.
don't know.
Healthcare
Oh, it's a
authority
private
holds
lease.
a
Okay.
long-term lease
Okay, got
for
it.
HCA.
I
The
couldn't
Cherry
remember
Street
who
building
built
in
it.
particular, yeah. Like the healthcare authority owns 4 or leases 4 different buildings in that area, but the Cherry Street building has a long-term lease.
Okay. Good one, Mark. Thanks.
I'm hopeful that there's a solution here. So that's the one I wanted to circle back on. And then I'd like to mention one other thing, and this is a good segue into that topic, and that is everything you see on this list of permit applications that are pending are the ones that we know about. And as you might imagine, the wheels of construction don't slow down. And so one of our biggest challenges is to find these projects and sort of walk them through the permitting process, help them steer them towards the compliance, which is submit your application. Now we're not required for the State Clean Air Act to do that, but the agency does it anyways, and a lot of time gets spent seeking out potential projects, making sure that they're aware of what's required. And I just want to show you really quickly just what's involved in that. Everybody's involved here at the agency, from the compliance folks who are out in the field seeing potential new sources to the engineers back here in the office who comb the SEPA register to search for new sources. Dan finds them in some of his work dealing with news agencies, but they all funnel down to what we refer to as first contact. So this is a category of work. We've labeled it first contact, and it's work associated with determining whether a project requires a construction permit, and then getting them on the right track to submitting that construction permit. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly. Hopefully this will work. Okay, do you see the the green screen?
Not yet.
Oh,
There we go. It's coming up now.
Okay. Okay, so thumbs up on the green screen. Okay.
Yes.
So
what year did we? Oh,
excuse me. Okay, so this is our database, which the agency uses for a multitude of purposes, but I'm just going to click here on first contact. This is our first contact log, because all efforts associated with first contact, we keep a pretty meticulous record so that we can keep track of decisions that we make. So I'm just going to pull up one record as an example here. Whoops. Okay, here's the list of stuff that we've got going on, cases that we're investigating to determine whether or not a construction permit is required. And I'm going to pull up this one here. It's Spencer Forest Products. Let me click on it. This is out in Clallam County. And here you see the record of the folks here at ORCAA who have been involved in determining whether a notice of construction permit application is required. Dan's name shows up here. It looks like this was picked off the SEPA register, and Lauren Wybrew, one of our engineers, has been working directly with this facility, Spencer Forest Products. This is for a new mill. And all these dates here that I'm scrolling down are the dates that Lauren either had meetings with or talked with or sent an email to Spencer. And then this area right here, which I just highlighted, are her determinations. And so I'll just quickly wrap up by saying that in this particular case, we found Spencer Forest Products off the SEPA register. We worked with them, and Lauren's determination is that they do require a notice of construction. A notice of construction is required actually before they start moving equipment onto the site. Unfortunately, I've been told that they're already committed to buying equipment and may have already moved stuff on the site. We'll have to follow up on that, but Lauren's determination here was that a notice of construction is required, and she sent all the permit application forms to Spencer, and hopefully shortly here they will get us a notice of construction application that we could start working on. So that's just a quick overview of what we do up front in the way of helping facilities submit a permit and do the right thing. And a lot of times they do, but there's quite a few times that they don't do the right thing. So I think that this is an important function of the agency. We call it first contact and its assistance. So I'll end right there and just offer again, if you have any questions regarding any cases, to let me know.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yeah.
Mark, I gotta tell you, I'm trying to think how many years I've been on here. I'm thinking 4 or 5. I'm not sure, but I think that's the first one I remember you saying that you're recommending not happened. You usually always find a way to get to yes on these. I was just a little surprised. And I mean that as a compliment though, not as it's to the point to where if you say it, there must really be something to it, because I've never heard you say no.
Thanks for that comment, Randy. In fact, I talked with Robert this morning to figure out a good course of action, and we have two distinct routes. We could either issue a notice to deny, or we chose the second option, which is send them a letter to get them back here to figure out a solution. So we stopped short of saying we deny your application. We're just saying, hey, come back to us. Let's rethink this. Maybe it's you got to have a smaller generator on the roof away from air intakes. Maybe it's a battery backup. But yeah, I think, and in my conversation with Robert, we can only recall one time where we out and out said no, and we learned our lesson back then that it's better to say, let's go back to the drawing table and figure out a solution than to just say no way, no how. So yeah, you're right.
Okay, great report, Mark. Thank you for digging in. And I'll just point out that your showing of the database is a good reminder that we need to really talk about modernizing that system so that it's a lot more intuitive for everyone to use. I can't remember the last time I saw an Access database, so.
That's on our list.
Yeah, that database was actually built in-house, and I've got to send some kudos out to Jennifer DeMay, who was really instrumental in putting that together, and Debbie too. There was others involved, but they did the lion's share of the work and maintain it. I think she'll give a thumbs up for updating it. So.
Yeah, it's a big job, and thanks to everyone who keeps that. The tool's instrumental for everything we do, and I just feel like you need a Star Trek logo on the first contact page, though. So, with that, I'm going to go ahead and move us to education and outreach. Dan.
Hello. So a lot of the past month, I've been picking up additional duties, like hosting Zoom meetings and working with Debbie to pick up some of the IT slack, what we can without an IT person in-house now. So any issues with Zoom, feel free to direct your comments and anger at me. I'm the one holding the button here. So on the outreach side of things, working with, again, compliance, continually trying to help them do their jobs. Robert mentioned the one really good success story we had with the homeless gentleman that became a great advocate for us within that homeless community. He's coming to get more brochures. I actually delivered twice over the summer brochures to his mail stop at that bookstore downtown so that he could replenish his supply as he went out to the various encampments. So that's an ongoing process, and great work on Robert and the compliance team's part to get him in and get him talking. And then we were able to work with the bookstore that serves as a mail stop for that community. So that was a great win all around for not only getting out to that community, but then getting a retailer downtown to be an advocate for us as well. So good story there. On wood stove stuff, we're starting to see an uptick. We've had a pretty slow winter in program, but we're seeing a strong uptick in interest of people getting rid of their wood stoves, which is typically as we get into the spring months, people are realizing what a hassle it is again to have to carry wood into their house all winter long and have the dirt and bark and snow and mud coming in and out as they stoke that fire. So we're seeing more and more people interested in both the wood stove recycling and in Thurston and Mason County, the replacement with heat pumps and natural gas. I will note that the heat pump side of the equation is really slow still because of availability of product. And it sounds like the big bottleneck is computer controllers in those ductless heat pumps. So people just can't get the units into their homes because they're not available yet. So, but we are seeing like I said, a strong uptick. So we hope to see a big push this spring with that. And then on outdoor burning, let me pull this up. We have our wood stove or our residential outdoor burning program. We've got the long-term program here in Thurston County. It's been almost 25 years at least. We've had a program that's been online since 2015. So you can see all the green dots are active outdoor residential yard waste outdoor burning permits in Thurston County. Those are good from October 1 through the following July 14th. The red dots are people that applied for permits, but they're in cities or urban growth areas. So they get letters, emails back saying, thanks for your interest in staying within the law, but your permit is invalid because you're in a no burn area. And then in the blue dots over here, that's the new Grace Harbor County Fire District 12 and City McCleary program. It's been slow to get up and running. We've took brochures and posters out to the city and to the libraries, sent some mailers out. We anticipate seeing that really pick up again this spring as people are looking to get rid of their yard. They're cleaning up their yards. They're looking to get rid of storm debris and whatnot. But again, that's first year for that program, launched it in late October or early October. And we've got 25 total permits. And you can see some of them are people that thought they were in Fire District 12 and they're well outside it. But again, that program is something that we anticipate seeing more people using it. The fire district likes the idea of sharing information through the free permit program. And it's something we are sharing and offering to other fire districts throughout our jurisdiction. And the selling points, again, are it's a free program, but it gives us a way and gives the fire districts a way to communicate safe and legal burning messaging to the burners, as well as a way to contact them if there is an issue. If there's complaints, we can immediately pull up information and see who's holding the permit in the area and ask them if they're burning. And it saves a trip out to look sometimes. Plus, if there's a burn ban, if there's fire safety issues or air quality issues, we can contact these people in a bulk email and say, please don't burn for this period of time. So that's where we are. Again, a lot of maintenance stuff going on. Doing a lot of work with Jeff on the system administrator recruiting, and Jeff will fill you in on where we stand with that, I'm sure. But it's been a challenging month, but it's fun to stay busy and have a whole lot of different things on your plate each day.
Thanks for rising to the challenge, Dan. Questions for Dan? Well, I just have to say nothing's made me feel more surrounded or been clear why Thurston County has such a high asthma rate compared to the rest of the state than looking at that map. I mean, talk about a public health opportunity for the county and ORCAA to continue a discussion, because it's certainly infiltrating my air quality at home. So, but that's selfish. So, Dan, I have a serious question for you. Emergency generators and wood stove replacement. Do we have educational materials available either through us or the Department of Ecology or the EPA about why an electric appliance is better for the environment and public health, both indoor and outdoor?
Our messaging doesn't really delve into the indoor air quality on wood stoves, at least, and that's something we've looked at and will be reevaluating. That's as we're seeing more study and more research showing that there's a strong correlation that it's even in a sealed wood stove, you're getting a lot of PM pollution inside the house, not just out the top of the chimney. So that's something we'll look at. I know EPA has got some good materials, and working with the Northwest Air Quality Communicators, that's one of the agenda items we'll be looking at in the coming months of how to better communicate that. And then also, again, sometimes our ambient air work and our climate change concerns are at loggerheads. For instance, natural gas is a great way to cut ambient air pollution, but it's a terrible climate change source. So we'll look at using our wood stove program and minimizing the natural gas replacement options. There's a lot more electric fireplaces that are being developed and are really efficient and easier and cleaner. So we'll be pushing that more. And then again, the ductless heat pump, we've pushed for the past 3 cycles, so 6 years of this program. We've said, yeah, we'll give strong financial incentive if you take out a wood stove and go with a electric heat pump, because it's zero emission locally, it's zero climate emission, and you get heating and cooling. So a couple more Junes like we had last year, and I think everybody's going to want a heat pump in their house.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I think, I feel a policy loggerhead coming in the region and probably the state as we see more and more about electrification. And so this actually is something that I think I'd like to add to the brainstorm list for the work plan, Jeff, is just a better understanding of the educational and regulatory opportunities around moving towards a more electric system, hardening our grid, where it's applicable. Because my sense is, in Olympia, building a fully electric house is actually cheaper in the short term and the long term. But I don't know if that's the same out in a rural community with rates and different things like that. So it'd be really cool to have a better understanding of that, both from the residential standpoint around wood stoves, but then also, to the point around the healthcare authority. Our first response should be, here's a packet on a solar system with a battery backup that will meet your needs, rather than a permit for an emergency generator or even after the fact. And I know that's a big discussion, so I'd like us to understand it better, even if we don't make any changes. Okay.
That sounds great.
Okay. I'm not hearing any dissent from anyone. I know it's complex and we need to understand. I don't know. I'm not necessarily suggesting a regulatory approach, though. I do think wood burning is on the outs in the urban areas. So, okay. Nothing else for Dan. Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate that. And now we'll move to finance and administration. Lynn.
Good morning, all. Nice to see you. So just a couple items. I know Jim Cooper had shared with you at the onset of the meeting that April, the Finance Committee will be meeting, and likely in May as well. So in April, we'll discuss the financial report for the period ending March 31, 2022, 9 months into our fiscal year. And just as a courtesy reminder, we're a fiscal year July 1 through June 30th. We'll also review a draft budget of fiscal year 2023 at the April finance meeting. And then come May, we'll provide an updated fiscal year 2023 budget that will reflect updates from staff and our finance committee. At the last board meeting in February, there was indication of a possible budget amendment we're going to hold off at this point because after careful consideration and projections completed, and we'll closely watch and monitor the budget current year and report back if it changes. At this point, we are safe to say we are not looking at a budget amendment. And I know that Jeff's going to talk about that. And so I'm going to end there. I know we're getting close to time as well. and entertain any questions before going over to Jeff Johnston. Okay, thank you for your time and have a super day, y'all.
Thank you, Lynn. Look forward to that budget conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, on to Jeff.
Okay, well, thanks. Thanks everybody at ORCAA for giving those reports from the managers. I've got just a couple things to add from my chair. I think everything's going well with my transition in the agency. I'm now in my 6th week, so I think everything's going pretty well. So in addition to, I mean, Mark showed some of the permits that I've been signing, so that's been interesting. But my focus for the first 30 days has really been getting to know staff, the day-to-day interactions, of course, also coming up to speed on the agency budget. And we've had some conversation already this morning about filling our IT system administrator position. So pretty focused on that. We had it originally posted for 3 weeks. We had a total of 2 applicants. So we kind of refocused, updated our posting, and really worked to get it out in front of more people. And I think, so Dan let me know this morning, we currently have 4 complete applications and a variety of, and some other resumes. So we're really hoping that by next week, we'll have a full group to look at that then we can figure out how to move forward, with an interview process. So, because also, as Dan has mentioned, and of course, not having an IT person has had some implications. Dan has taken on some additional responsibilities. Debbie's done some additional things. There's been, just a few things that have come up where everybody's jumped in to try to help and figure out the issue that's going on. So really appreciate that. But so far, knock on wood, no major problems or issues that we've had to deal with thus far. Let's see, other things I've been focusing on. So as we've been mentioning, been working on the proposal for the fiscal year 23 budget, which we'll be bringing to the Finance Committee next month. Let's see, mentioned the IT position. Let's see, and then so kind of shifting is thinking about it in terms of first 30 days, the next 30 days. So in this current 30-day period, really looking to shift my focus out to conversations with board members. I've had conversations with a few of you, got some scheduled for the coming weeks. So at this point, I think I've reached out to everybody about getting something scheduled. But so if you haven't heard from me, or maybe yeah, so reach back out to me, let me know. But again, certainly hoping that in the coming 2, 3, 4 weeks can get the conversations with the rest of you scheduled. So let's see, I think there's that. Let me just mention that on a different topic, we learned last week that the plaintiffs in the 350 lawsuit have filed an appeal regarding the summary judgment dismissal of the case by the King County Superior Court. So their attorney is seeking a direct review at the state Supreme Court. So again, according to Jeff, we've exchanged some emails and we've got a conversation scheduled for later this week, but we were expecting this appeal to be filed. So, well, again, we'll continue to keep you posted. I don't know, Jeff, was there anything else that you wanted to mention on that here today?
I think that covers it. The appeal directly to the Supreme Court is unusual, and we think it's probably best that it go to the Court of Appeals, but the air agencies haven't taken any positions on that, and we aren't required to until after I believe they have a statement of grounds for direct review coming up in the next week or so, and then we have a response that's due 2 weeks after that. So we'll be formulating our position in coordination with the other air agencies. I don't think it changes the underlying merits of the case, and I doubt the Supreme Court's going to be interested in elevating this in importance, but we'll see.
Great, thanks, Jeff. So just in terms of legislative stuff, of course, as probably most of you are following, we are near the very end of the session. I think the session's scheduled to end on Thursday. There's a lot of recent conversations as they work to finish on getting it to the transportation package funded, figuring out how to do that. Most of the things, or a lot of the things that that I've mentioned, that I mentioned last month, have died, aren't moving forward. Although one exception to that is Senate Bill 5961, which is the incentivizing the use of biochar in government contracts. So that has that both houses have concurred, and I think that's on the governor's desk or will be soon for signature. That is at this point primarily what it entails is instructing DNR to do a pilot study on the use of biochar, various aspects of that, but it does specifically call out the Olympic region. So undoubtedly there will be, we'll want to closely track that and figure out what the implications of that are for ORCAA and the work that we do. So I think that's all that I have in my report today, unless there are any questions or other things you'd like to hear from me about.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I'm obviously, as this group knows, very excited about 5961. And I see an opportunity, I think with DNR, we're really talking about slash piles and finding a better way to deal with that, which is one of the issues that ORCAA deals with all the time, complaints of smoke and actual impacts in the PM 2.5. So I would love it if we continue to think about how we can assist DNR in collecting data about, as they move forward. I think that we have a role to play as the clean air regulators.
Great, thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
Sounds like a contract opportunity to me, Greg. Okay, good comment. Anything else for Jeff? Okay, well, so then we're on to good of the order. Is there anything for the good of the order? Okay, so just a reminder to reach out to Jeff if you haven't scheduled with him for a one-on-one, Jeff Johnston, and definitely let Greg or I know if you have any input for the annual work plan or the performance measurements for Jeff, which I'm kind of now thinking might come together as a package, but we'll talk about that in a moment, in the coming weeks. Do we need an executive session, Mr. Myers? No. Okay. Anything further? Hearing no further business, we are adjourned. Take care, everyone. Enjoy the sunshine.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
See you
you.
after spring break.